We are ready for an election. I think the country is ready for election. People are crying out for change. And I say to the Prime Minister, what's he hiding? If he's not going to set a date, what's he hiding from the public? This has serious implications for the country because he's basically saying he's going to be squatting for months and months in Downing Street, dithering and delaying. So if he's not being clear, and I don't think he's setting a date, what's he hiding?
Would you like to see it in the first half of this year then?
I would like to see an election as soon as possible. I think the vast majority of the public want to see an election as soon as possible. And the people can't afford for the Prime Minister to be squatting for months on end this year.
OK, you're waiting to move into number 10 should the polls prove right and you win a majority. You're massively ahead in the polls, Keir Starmer, and for now it does look like you will be the next PM. So I want to just use this interview to help voters understand your priorities from day one of a Labour government to help them make a meaningful choice. So my first question, it's really basic. Will a Labour government commit to cutting taxes for working people from day one?
We have said on taxes that we do want to lower the burden on working people, but that has got to be fair and it's got to be affordable. And we're likely to have a budget before the election, whatever the date is, so nobody quite knows the state of affairs. But I always say the first priority, you ask me what's essentially the first priority if we come into government, it's growth, it's economic growth. And I know previous Labour leaders have said tax and spend is the priority. For me, it's growing the economy because that's been the single biggest failure of the last 14 years.
You're talking about growth, which is you're building ambitions on something you can't guarantee. So I come back to the issue about tax cuts. Your ambition is to cut taxes. The government's now reversing tax rises that they've introduced. They're putting money back in workers' pockets. There's reports that Labour is now weighing up plans for income tax or NI cuts, national insurance cuts in the manifesto. Are you?
We will set out the manifesto, Beth, when we get to that stage. And everything will be fully costed, fully set out. But I can't emphasise enough that if we don't grow our economy, if we don't get more wealth created in this country, then we are taxing an ever-reducing pie. I'm not going to let that happen, and I'm not going to allow unfunded tax cuts to be made. Liz Truss tried that experiment, and working people are still paying the price today. I'm not going to allow an incoming Labour government to do that.
So no tax cuts from day one because you've got to get the growth first. Is that fair?
Well, we will set out our full position. We've still got a budget to go, whatever the date of the election. But I do resist this temptation to go straight to the lever of tax or spend. Before we get to those levers, there's a very important lever, which is growing our economy,
which could
making
take
sure
1 year,
we're creating
2 years,
wealth.
3 years, 4 years, 5 years.
I'm pretty confident from the discussions we're having with the private sector who we want to partner with on this, that we can go at pace, because things like planning regulations can be changed fast. Infrastructure projects and the skills that we need can be changed fast.
OK, let me put it this way then. Is your ambition for tax cuts for working people in the first 2 years of a Labour government?
Well, look, we will set this out in its entirety. Of course I want working people to pay less tax, to have less of a burden on them, but we've got to get our economy working. And I think everybody understands that.
Let's go to another tax cut then, because this one is clearer. Inheritance tax. You're very clear in that speech that you do not support that tax. If the Conservatives introduced it ahead of an election, would you reverse that tax cut? Would you reverse it?
Look, I don't think that further tax cuts for those that are very wealthy with nothing for working people is the right way forward.
Okay, so
I'd oppose it. It wouldn't be what we would do. And of course, we would change that if we got the opportunity to do so.
OK, that's very clear. So if they put it in and you win, you would reverse it. That's very clear for voters to understand where you are. Let me come to one more, frozen tax thresholds. You launched the Tory tax calculator, which tell people what they'll pay under the Conservatives. You presumably are going to urge the Chancellor at this March budget that we're going to have to take action on freezing thresholds.
Well, this is a stealth tax, as we know, but there's a reason for that, because we're in this doom loop now, which is low growth and therefore taxes going up. And that's why we've said this is stealth. This is why we've said this is taking money out of people's pockets. Because instead of getting the growth that we need, the government is taking or reaching deeper and deeper into the pockets of working people. And that's wrong in principle.
So, what will you do under a Labour government, though? Will you unfreeze those thresholds? Is it something you're at least looking at?
I'm not going to make promises that I can't keep. I'm not going to make tax cuts.
Well, you can't have a go at them about it and put a Tory tax calculator out and then go, oh, but we're not going to do anything about it. I mean, that's the sort of timidity I was asking you about at the speech.
They've smashed the economy. They've broken the economy. Working people are paying many more pounds every month as a result of the damage they've done to the economy. And that is why they now have to reach...
But you might not unfreeze those
That's why
allowances.
they're reaching into the pockets of working people. What I've said is we would never go down that path. Working people today are paying more on their mortgages than they were 2 years ago because of Liz Truss. That cannot be acceptable. I will not let a Labour government repeat the mistakes that are costing working people.
But you're not committing to unfreezing those allowances?
Well, everything that we can do to lower the burden will be done. But it has to be fair and it has to be affordable. What I'm not going to do is make uncosted, unfunded promises. That's what Liz Truss did, and it broke the economy, and working people are paying the price.
I want to just end on talking about the tone of the election. Justin Welby said this week to treat opponents as human beings in an election, to forswear wedge issues. Do you agree with him?
My fear is that because the government has no record to put before the country, it can't say, look at the great achievements, you must want more of this, because that would be laughable. It can't say we've had great leaders, because they burnt through 5, most of them now in disgrace. And so they will go low. But yes, bring on an argument.
Are you going high, or are you going to go low too? That's my question.
We will meet their fire with fire, because the stakes at this election are so high for working people.
So just to be clear on this, because in the spirit, those Labour attack ads from last year on Rishi Sunak, you don't believe that they were a mistake. You would repeat that if necessary.
I've made my case, positive case this morning, for hope and for change. I don't think the Tories can make that argument. They will go low. What I'm saying is, if they want to go with fire into this election, we will meet their fire with fire.
So if they go low, you'll go low too?
The stakes
This is not the Hillary Clinton argument.
The stakes are so high for working people. We have to win this election and bring about the change that is so desperately needed by the country.
So Keir Starmer, you think you'll be Prime Minister by the end of the year?
I know that whatever polls say, whatever commentators say, every single vote has to be earned. And I know that for that to happen, I, the Labour Party, the whole team, need to be exceptional this year and to make the case that I made this morning about hope, about change, about a decade of national renewal taking our country forward and turning our back on this awful decline of the last 14 years.